Does anyone have any questions for this week?
Well, sure. I'd like to ask you a question about last week's lecture.
Yes, please.
Okay, so there was a statement, I copied it down. It says Bodhi, Bodhidharma on not understanding cause and effect. Let me just put this in the chat box
Okay.
because it's easier that I could read it from there. Those who blindly perform the 10 good deeds and foolishly seek happiness are born as gods in the desire realm. But sure, I don't understand. Read this again. I don't understand who are the ones that are performing this blindly with, you know,
People like us, people who hold the 5 precepts, and because the 5 precepts are part of the 10 good deeds.
yeah.
So people who hold the precepts and or the 10 good deeds, but do not hold it for, how you say, we hold it without right view. So what he means by foolishly seeking happiness is we hold it without thinking about ending suffering. Our aim is just to have more pleasure in life. So what we want is blessings.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. So regular people who, they look forward to a good life or heavenly life, but they don't think that they don't realize that even that has its end, and then the suffering still continues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point does it not become so, they're not classified as blindly performing the 10 good deeds?
So that's what we're doing right now in these few classes, when we are understanding right view and applying it to precepts. So we learn how to hold the precepts with right view, so that we still get happiness, but at the same time we are creating merit so that we can end our suffering in samsara.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the 10 good deeds remain the same. They're still the same, but it's the heart or the intention behind how you hold it that makes the difference.
Okay. Same with the 5 precepts, upholding the 5 precepts, right?
Yes, 10 good deeds. The first 5 of the 10 good deeds are the 5 precepts.
Okay.
So Sahai, you have a question. Why don't we open today's class, and then once we are done, Sahai, I'll ask you for the question that you have. At the same time, if you prefer, you can type it in the chat box as well. It's up to you. Who do we have to request Dharma today?
Pastor, is Melinda to request for Dharma today?
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting our palms together. Melinda, once you're ready, I mean, once I advance the slide and you're ready, then you can begin.
Okay. Gong Qing Da De San Ting Wei Chi Fa Hui Ji Yi Quan Zhong Shen Qing Zhua Miao Fa Lu Jiao Da Wo Men Lu He Liao Shen Tuo Si Li Ku De Le Sun Zhen Wu Shen. Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering and attain peace and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed noble and perfectly enlightened one. Namo Sadanto Suchetoye Allahati San Miao San Puto Che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back to this week's, this is class number 53. It's the 53rd session that we're having on the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. And as usual, we'll begin by chanting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life. Medicine Master Buddha 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 Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life. Medicine Master Buddha, Medicine Master does come one. 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 Okay, let me change the slides for today. For today's class. Saha, you said that you had a question.
Amitabha Dharma Master.
Amitabha.
My question is, when chanting the Medicine Master mantra and practicing the Medicine Master repentance, can we still vow to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land, or we are going to be born in Medicine Master Buddha Land? Does it matter? Amitabha?
Actually, you can do any practice that you want. Okay, so traditionally, Amitabha, for people who want to be reborn in the Pure Land, it's reciting Amitabha Buddha's name. But where you get reborn is based on your intention. So you can be reciting the Great Compassion Mantra. You can be doing the Medicine Master Buddha repentance. You can be doing Om Mani Padme Hum, or you can be reciting Amitabha's name. As long as you wish to, or you vow to be reborn in the Pure Land, that's where you go. So it's not so much the practice; it's where is your intention behind the practice.
Okay, Amitabha.
Okay, and also just before we begin our class, Ron had a question regarding last week about Ron's question was Bodhidharma's comment. He said, those who blindly perform the 10 good deeds and foolishly seek happiness are born as gods in the realm of desire. So Ron's asking, who are these? Who are people who blindly perform the 10 good deeds? Well, first of all, the 10 good deeds, the first 5 of the 10 good deeds are actually the 5 precepts. And who Bodhidharma is referring to are people who hold the 5 precepts or the 10 good deeds without fully, how you say, they're not holding it to as how the Buddha taught, which is ultimately to get out of samsara, which is to end birth and death and to end our afflictions and our suffering. So there are a lot of people, you could say, who lead a virtuous life, but what they want is more happiness. They want pleasure and happiness in this life, and they might seek a heavenly rebirth, and they are not, in their hearts and minds, they're not seeking, or they don't think about that how they hold the precepts, or the heart or the intention behind how they hold the precepts or how they view the precepts can actually lead to end of suffering. Maybe they don't see the potential in themselves, or maybe they just want happiness, that's all. So what we're doing right now is learning how to apply right view to the 5 precepts and more. So we're going to start off with, so what we've been doing in the last few classes is exploring right view and how it holds to precepts and why. And then I don't think we can get to right intention today, but excuse me. But what we're going to do is going to explore right view and right intention because they go along, and how then with right view and right intention, how holding the precepts in the way that the Buddha taught us can end our suffering. Okay, so that's very important, because if not, then we can hold the 5 precepts, but we continue revolving in samsara and our affliction never ends. Okay, so the next slide that I have is on wrong view, but we're not going to do wrong view today. Let's cover right view first. So I'm just going to skip the next slide. I'm sorry for the flash on your screen. And today we're going to go to a sutta called the Upajjhatthana Sutta, 5 subjects for frequent recollection. If you remember from last week, we covered this, so I just wanted to refresh people's memory. This sutta is something that is recited on a daily basis. If you go to, say, the Ajahn Chah monasteries, the monks there recite this every morning. And so what you recite, I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So this, you can say that the last paragraph also refers to Ron's question about regarding Bodhidharma, saying people who blindly perform the 10 good deeds. Blindly means you hold the 10 good deeds, but you don't really understand. You don't have the right view as taught by the Buddha. It's better than nothing. It's better than not doing any good deeds. But there's a lot more that you can achieve just by having the right perception. So the Upajjhatthana Sutta is an example of someone with right view and right intention. Or maybe right view first, because right view, when you have right view, your outlook on life is very, let me see, what's the very real, is unfiltered. You are seeing life for what it is. You're not fooling yourself. Yeah. What happens for someone who is, how do you say, oblivious, or maybe not wanting to confront the realities of life? Okay. we have this sutta called the Deva Dutta Sutta. Deva Dutta in Pali means the Deva messengers or the divine messages. So this word divine messages, for those of you who are familiar with the life story of the Buddha before he became the Buddha, will find this term very familiar, the divine messages, because when the Buddha was still a prince, okay, this was when at 29 years old, he was at the peak of his life, 29 years old, he was a prince. He became curious about life outside the palace. So at this time, he was still happily enjoying life, thinking that life will always go on in the way that he knew, or maybe he never actually thought about life. He just every day just melted from one day to the other, full of activities, music, parties, people to hang out with, good food. So the prince, was always content and either ignorant or just unaware of the realities of life. And they say that it is because the father purposely made it so. The father designed the prince's life not so that the princess princess life so that the prince would not encounter any suffering at all. And this was because when he was born, the prince was born, he received a prediction saying that, someone told the king that your son is going to be a great man. He's either going to be a wheel-turning sage king, meaning one who can unite the entire earth. That's how great a king he would be. Or he would be an enlightened person, a teacher of gods and humans. So his father, being a king himself, obviously wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. So he did not want any. It is said that even the flowers in the palace, before the flowers had a chance to wilt or to go dry or droop, they would change the flowers. So the prince would never encounter anything that changes, which is a bit hard to believe. I think it's just a very romantic way of saying that the prince up to this point in his life never really thought about life. He just was caught up in the moment of his enjoyment and bliss and happiness. So the prince made 3 visits to the city outside the palace. And little did he know that this visit would totally change how he saw the world and himself and his role in the world. So in these 3 visits, the prince saw what is known as the 4 divine messengers. And why were they called the 4 divine messages? There are various reasons. One of the main reasons, and most popular reason, is because these messengers were not ordinary people, but were actually gods. They were devas from the heaven who knew about the potential of the prince, and they wanted to help him realize his potential as the Buddha. So what happened was, before the prince left the palace to go into the city, his father, the king, made sure that all those places that the prince would visit would be free of old people, anyone suffering, beggars, anyone who is sick, and make sure the place was decorated well. But despite all the king's efforts, the gods still appeared first as an old man. That was the first divine messenger. Second divine messenger on the prince's second trip. The prince made 3 trips. The first trip he saw an old man. Second trip he saw a sick man. And on the third trip he saw a dead body. And on the same trip as well, he also saw a mendicant, or someone, an ascetic, someone who had left the home life. And the prince asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I have dedicated my life to looking for a way out of this tangle of suffering and rebirth, to pass the message on to the prince that there's actually a way out of this suffering, and that people do try to find a way out, and that led to the prince deciding to leave the palace and embark on his journey, and he became the Buddha. Okay, so this sutta that we have in front of us, the Devadutta Sutta, is called the Deva messengers, but it's not the messengers for the prince. No. These are messengers for us. Okay, so this sutta starts this way. It is the Buddha speaking to the monks. So the Buddha says, monks, it's as if there were two households with doors, and a man of good eyesight standing there between them would see people entering and leaving a house, wandering out and about. Says, in the same way, I, by means of the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, see beings passing away and reappearing, and I discern how they are inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, in accordance with their actions. So the Buddha is saying he sees people being reborn and dying, like coming into the world and leaving the world, and they come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, and born into good families, bad families, and they have all have different different lives and different can't use the word luck, but different potentials in life. Some suffer, some have good. So the Buddha continues to say, says, oh, how these beings who were endowed with good conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not revile noble ones, who held right views and undertook actions under the influence of right views, with the breakup of the body after death, have reappeared in a good destination, the heavenly world. Okay, so Buddha is saying good conduct of body, speech, and mind. What is that? That means precepted behavior, because our precepts are designed for us to be mindful of the karma that we create through only these three ways that we create karma, which is our body, our actions, our speech, the things that we say, and the thoughts that we hold in our minds. Okay, so Buddha says good conduct, body, speech, and mind, and who respect the noble ones, teachers, parents, who have right views and undertook actions under right view, they appear in a good destination, the heavenly world. Okay, this is kind of like what Bodhidharma is saying, but slightly different because these people have right view. Okay, then the Buddha says, or how these beings who were endowed with bad conduct of body, speech, and mind, so beings who do not hold the five precepts, for example, says who revile noble ones, held wrong views, and undertook actions under the influence of wrong views, with the breakup of the body after death, have reappeared in the realm of the hungry ghosts, have reappeared in the animal womb, have reappeared in the plane of deprivation, bad destination, or lower realm. And in this, the Buddha means the hells, the hell realms. And then okay, let's move on to the next slide. Excuse me. Then the Buddha says, now the Buddha is describing what happens when a person is about to go into the hell. Buddha says, then the hell wardens, seizing such a being by the arms, present him to King Yama. He says, this is a man, your majesty, with no respect for mother, no respect for father, no respect for contemplatives, no reverence for Brahmins, no honor for the leaders of his clan. Let your majesty decree his punishment. Okay, so this person who has committed offenses is brought the hell. In many cultures, there's apparently a judge in the hell, King Yama, who then, as how the Buddha describes in this sutta, is like a trial or a questioning. So King Yama then King Yama interrogates and interpellates and castigates the man regarding the first deva messenger. So interpellates is it means it's the same as question, but in like a more of a formal setting, like in a court, you will use the word interpellate. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. So he says, my good man, didn't you see the first deva messenger that has appeared among human beings? And then the poor man says, I didn't, Lord. Then King Yama says, my good man, didn't you see among human beings a tender baby boy lying prone in his own urine and excrement? Then the man says, I did. So when questioned the first time about the first deva messenger, the man has no idea what's going on. Says, I didn't, Lord. But then when King Yama explains that, haven't you seen people being born? He says, oh, yes. Then King Yama says, my good man, didn't the thought occur to you, observant and mature, I too am subject to birth, have not gone beyond birth, I better do good with body, speech, and mind. And then the man can only reply, I couldn't, Lord, I was heedless. Heedless also means neglectful. So it's interesting that King Yama calls him observant and mature because, in other words, you know how to think for yourself. You should know better. In other words, you should know better. And seeing people being born means that, after you die, you're going to be reborn yourself. It's not just this life, but there's a next life, because if not, where do people come from? That's the point that King Yama is making. So after this man says that he's neglectful, King Yama says, my good man, through heedlessness or carelessness, you did not do what is good with body, speech, and mind. And of course, my good man, they will deal with you in accordance with your heedlessness. For the evil karma of yours was neither done by your mother, nor done by your father, nor done by your brother, nor by your sister, by your friends and companions, by your kinsmen and relatives, nor by the gods or the devas. The evil karma was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Okay, so that's pretty clear. So then King Yama talks about the second deva messenger. Anyone who wants to guess how many messengers there are in this sutta, you can type it in the chat box, or you can just unmute your mic. Saha, you said you had more questions. If you find it it's relevant to the topic right now, you can ask, or you can type it in the chat box, or later towards the end of today's lecture, we can run through the questions. So now King Yama is asking again, he says, didn't you see the second messenger? And again, this person says, I didn't, Lord. So then King Yama clarifies, say, didn't you see among human beings a woman or man 80, 90, 100 years old, age, roof rafter, crooked, bent over, supported by a cane, palsied, miserable, broken tooth, gray head, scanty head, bald, wrinkled, with limbs all blotchy, meaning old age? Then this man finally understood. Oh, he said, yes, I did. So King Yama says, my good man, didn't the thought occur to you, observant and mature, that you too were subject to aging, have not gone beyond aging, that you better perform good deeds with your body, speech, and mind? And then the man said, I couldn't, Lord, I was heedless, meaning he was careless. Although he knew that, he's going to be subject to aging and he better perform good deeds, you have nothing to say. Basically, this person really has nothing to say. So the formula then goes the same, but we shall not go through the whole prose of what King Yama said. We'll move on to the third deva messenger. And what is this third deva messenger? Sickness. King Yama says, human beings, a woman or man, diseased, in pain, ill, lying in his or her own urine and excrement, lifted up by others, laid down by others. So this is the third deva messenger, illness. And then there's a fourth deva messenger. Okay, what is the fourth deva messenger? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. It says, didn't you see among human beings kings catching a thief, a criminal, having him tortured in many ways? It says flogging with whips, being beaten with canes, beaten with clubs, hands having cut off, feet cut off, both hands and feet cut off. Wow, okay. Ears cut off, nose cut off, ears and nose, subjecting him to the porridge pot. I have no idea what the porridge pot is. The polished shell shave, the Rahu's mouth, the flaming garland, the blazing hand, the grass duty ascetic, the bark dress ascetic, etc., etc., etc. Okay, what are all these? I don't really know, but these are all punishments. And to get an idea of the punishments, you just look at history, look at all the medieval tools. Men have the capacity of being extremely, extremely cruel. Okay, so men have devised all kinds of torturous devices to subject other men. I would say people have created all kinds of horrible devices to subject other people to extreme pain and suffering. So over here, King Yama is describing all these various punishments for people who have gone against the law. Okay, so a thief, a criminal, and when he says kings catching them, meaning anything that you do that goes against the law that brings punishment. So being in prison, for example, would be one. And so the man says yes, he did see all this. He is familiar that there's a law and there's punishment involved. And then King Yama says, didn't the thought occur to you that people who do evil actions are tortured in this many ways in the here and now, and how much more in the hereafter? And I better do good with body, speech, and mind. Again, his reply is as good as being speechless. He was just being careless. He wasted his whole life. And then this is number 5, the 5th Deva messenger and the final Deva messenger. And this is about death. So King Yama says, didn't you see among human beings a woman, a man, a dead body, 1, 2 days or 3 days old, bloated, livid, oozing with lymph? That means, yeah, you can imagine unpleasant things to do with the body. And it says, didn't the thought occur to you that you too are subject to death, have not gone beyond death, so you better perform good deeds with your body, speech, and mind. And again, this poor guy who probably never had any Dharma, or maybe thought he was invincible or that it wasn't true, just realized he's wasted his whole life. And so King Yama again repeats to him and says that through heedlessness or because of your carelessness, you did not do what is good with body, speech, and mind. And of course, my good man, they will deal with you in accordance with your heedlessness, meaning your punishment awaits you because of your own doing. And he says that all this dharma, karma that you've created has been created by you yourself alone. It's not by anyone else. He concludes by saying that evil karma was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, having interrogated and interpolated and castigated the man regarding the 5th Deva messenger, King Yama falls silent. Okay, why did King Yama fall silent? Well, in the commentaries, it said that in Asian Buddhist kingdoms, it says there was a custom that when a king was sentencing a criminal to death or to be tortured, he would not actually express the sentence but would fall silent. So instead of saying the sentence, you just keep quiet, and people understood, oh, this person is going to be sentenced to a horrible sentence. So the rest of this sutta, okay, there's a whole section that outlines what happens in the hells. And we are not going to go through that today. If you are interested, just look up this sutta, Deva Dutta Sutta, and you can read the rest yourself. If you have read the Earth Store Sutra, it's very, very similar. The description of the hells in this sutta is very, very similar to how who was it? I think it was it Star Bodhisattva who described the hells in the Earth Star Bodhisattva Sutra as well. Why we are not going to go through that today? Well, when I was investigating this sutra, it is the part of the commentary also said that it says that if a student asks not to hear the description of the hells, a teacher should teach the student meditation and then wait until the student has reached stream entry before returning to the description of hell. Meaning, some of us may not be ready to hear the hells, and instead of the description of the hells being helpful, it might have a detrimental effect on our view of, say, practice and the precepts, because you want to have the right view. So I'll leave it all to you. If you are curious about how the hells are like, you can either investigate the rest of the sutra or this section of the sutra about the hells by yourself, or go read the Earth Star Sutra. It's the same. So we'll jump across all the hells and we'll come to this part of the sutta. And then now the Buddha is saying, he says, once monks, the thought occurred to King Yama. Those who did evil actions in the world are tortured in these many ways. Oh, that I might gain the human state, and that a Tathagata, worthy and rightly self-awakened, might arise in the world, and that I might attend to that Tathagata, and that he might teach me the Dharma, and that I might understand his Dharma. So, King Yama himself, seeing that the retribution for evil deeds or unwholesome deeds is so bad, he himself makes the wish that he wants to learn the Dharma under the Buddha. So the Buddha says, I tell you this, monks, not having heard it from another contemplative or Brahman. On the contrary, I tell you this just as I have known for myself, seen for myself, understood for myself. So the Buddha said, I'm not making up a story to scare you. This is something that I know to be real. I have seen it myself, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Some of you at this point may recall that I think Shufu has mentioned that King Yama is actually a bodhisattva, and he takes up the role out of compassion to try to help living beings. So for us who are in the Mahayana path, we can relate to King Yama because I'm sure there's not mentioned in this sutta that it would be, okay, I won't assume, but for us in the Mahayana path, this is where we realize that practicing the right Dharma, and if we can give rise to the same wish as King Yama, then not just being able to have the wisdom to ensure that we end our suffering and afflictions and avoid the hells, but we also can help people avoid the hells themselves by explaining to them or by showing them what the right view and right intention in the proper Dharma is like. Then we bystep all this punishment in the hells. Okay. Then there's another part in the sutta that says, warned by the deva messengers, those youths who are heedless, they grieve for a long, long time, people entering a lower state. So the lifespan in the hells is a very, very long time. Buddha says, but those here who are good, people of integrity, when warned by the deva messengers, aren't heedless of the noble Dharma ever. Who is this? Hopefully all of us. Okay, all of us right now who take the time to actually investigate the Dharma, because we know it's really, really for our own good. The Buddha says, people like us, people of integrity, when we are warned or when we are confronted by the Deva messengers, the realities of life, we are not careless. So we see danger, the Buddha says, seeing danger in clinging or in our attachments or desires, in the coming into play of birth and death, they are released from lack of clinging in the ending of birth and death. They, happy, arriving at safety, fully unbound in the here and now, having gone beyond all animosity and danger, have escaped all suffering and stress. So who are these people who have escaped all suffering and stress? if you look at all the sutras, if you become a stream enterer, a first stage arhat and above, okay, you are guaranteed not to fall. All the sutras say that. Why? Because there are certain delusions or ignorance that you have eradicated forever. So stream enters, and all of us, okay, in the suttas, stream entry up to is available, is an achievement that all of us, if we put our hearts and minds to it, can actually achieve. It's not far away, it's actually near. Okay, so let's go through the 5 messengers again. Okay, what are they? They are birth, old age, sickness, retribution of evil actions or cause and effect. So not just retribution of evil actions, but also retributions of all actions. And finally, death. Okay, so let me look at the, there's a relevant question. Ru Sang is asking, how do we make sure we have the right view or right intention for our cultivation? The only way is not to listen to people like me, although that might be helpful, is to know for yourself. Okay, the Buddha's instructions on how we get right view and right intention is to always go back to the sutra. In the final sutra that the Buddha spoke to living beings before he entered Nirvana, which is the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha gave us 4 guidelines called the 4 great references on how we should learn the Dharma. The Buddha said, it doesn't matter if you're listening to one monk, a small group of monks, a large group of monks, up to a huge gathering of monks. They are learned, they've left home for a long time, they know what they're talking about, etc., etc., etc. It says, it doesn't matter who you're listening the Dharma from, you neither accept nor reject, but whatever you hear, you reference back the sutras and the precepts as taught by the Buddha. Then you will know for yourself. Meaning, don't blindly listen. And then from there, Shufu will say you develop the Dharma selecting eye, the wisdom selecting eye. Okay, so right now what we're trying to do is trying to apply right view and right intention to holding the precepts. So one way I find that helpful in the precepts is looking at the precepts in terms of our relationship, meaning, and you all have heard me say this multiple times. One way is ask yourself, who are the people that you care for, that are really important to you? And I like this way of looking at the precepts because when I was at Berkeley Monastery, we would get visits by school children who were about maybe 10 to 12 years old, and they would ask us all kinds of questions about Buddhism and what we do in the monastery. And I wanted to find a way that I could explain the Buddhist lifestyle to children in a way that they could understand. So I would ask them a question. I say, who's very important to you in your life? Your parents? They all say yes. Your sisters, your brothers, some say yes, some say no. If you're some of them are bullied or they have irritating younger brothers and sisters. Most of them say yes. Then a lot of them say their pets, their dogs, and their cats. Grandmothers, grandfathers as well, people that they really care for, their best friends. So then I would ask them, I said, as these people that you care for go through life, as you know, as they go out to work, they go out to school, do you always want them to be surrounded by people who will never harm them, who will never go up to them and slap them for no reason, or take a knife and threaten to stab them? And they say, yes, of course, they want these people to not only to be safe, but to feel safe. And then you ask them the second question based on the precept, every person that they meet, do you want these people to be trustworthy, so that the people that you care for, everything they hear, they don't have to be suspicious? You know, they don't have to be lied to, they don't have to be cheated. And they say, yes, of course. So you go down a whole list of precepts, and they will answer yes to all of them. And then you turn it around and you say, well, so being a Buddhist just means that if you want the people that you care for to always meet people like that, then who are you to these people that you care for? So the 5 precepts become a very natural part of who you are, is who you should be. And immediately they understand, you know. So that's one way of looking at the 5 precepts in terms of relationships, not just say for your own blessings or for your own karma, because that might lead to a very how you say, very rigid way of holding the precepts. So okay, so this sutta is called the divine or the deva messengers. But for most of us, okay, who are surrounded by these messengers all the time, we react very differently from, say, the prince or the Buddha before he became the Buddha. So for us, these are not divine messengers. These are just things we like to ignore, you know, or things we don't really like to think about. It's just everyday life. So humans have a tendency of looking at life with what we call rose-tinted glasses. You want to see, we pay attention to the nice things, but the not so nice things we don't want to know. There's a saying, ignorance is bliss. But I think it's because most of us feel that there's nothing that we can really do about it, or it is up to, say, a God that has control over where we go or where we end up. And but the problem with that kind of viewpoint, in either trying to ignore it or thinking that we have no control, is that death will still come to us. Old age will still come to us if we are lucky. If not, then a lot of people are taken away when they're young. They meet their end. Sickness in one way or the other. Right now, everyone's really afraid of getting COVID. That's a huge thing that has taken over, that has controlled almost everyone's lives on this planet. And death. So our body is going to fail us one day, and if we don't do anything right now, we may find that we are not prepared when the time comes. But the good thing about the Dharma is that we are not helpless at all. The Buddha gave us everything that we need so that we can do something about it, so that we can be in control. We don't have to shy away or push to, one part of our, how you say, push it away and try to ignore the realities of life. So the Dharma gives us all that we need to overcome these issues. So what right view tries to do is to help us confront our own mortality, but not in a way that makes us feel helpless or makes us gloomy, but in a way that spurs us on to action, that says, oh, I better do something about it. If like people who are hungry and you have food, you naturally eat the food so you cure your hunger. You don't just keep on complaining or pushing the hunger away and trying to ignore the hunger and hope, that everything will work out well. Because why? You know that if you have food, you eat the food, the hunger will go away. Same with all this. Same with birth, old age, sickness, karmic results, and death. So once we realize that we are mortal, we are not going to live forever, we understand that our life itself is very fragile. It's so fragile that Venerable Ananda, there's a collection of teachings that is attributed to Venerable Ananda. And one of the teachings is, he says that those who have been born are standing like a seed upon a needle. Have anyone tried to balance, say, a sesame seed on a needle tip? It will, it's an almost impossible task. So once we accept that or we see that it's not just birth, aging, illness, death, but also other kinds of suffering. We have we experience sorrow, grief, all kinds of pain, mental stress, misery, physical pain. When we realize that we are actually not in control of anything that happens to us, and we are not just ourselves, but everything around us is also subject to impermanence, and that, you know, for someone who does not understand karma, cause and effect, and maybe like the person who the Devadatta Sutta is all about, they just live their life according to what they want and hope for the best. The Buddha, in a sutta called the Chigala Sutta, or called the Whole Sutta, he says a human birth is really, really hard to get. He says, how hard it is to get. He says, imagine if the entire world was an ocean. So you take Earth, okay, and there's no land. Everything's one big ocean, okay? That's how big the ocean is. And it says there's wind blowing all around. And in the ocean, there's a piece of wood with a hole. And this piece of wood with a hole is being blown around the ocean, floating randomly by itself. It says every 100 years, there's a turtle in the ocean that comes out for one breath. And he says that the chances of the turtle coming up once every 100 years for a breath, and the chances of that turtle coming up through that hole in that piece of wood that's floating randomly, and this turtle swimming randomly in the sea, is, you can compare the chances we get of a human rebirth as to that. So when we know all this, then we realize that, oh, then, you know, we better not be like this person in the Devadatta Sutta. We shouldn't be careless, because when the time comes, then it might be too late. So when we can contemplate our own divine messengers at this level, at whatever level that for everyone it will be different, but it will lead to a, hopefully it will lead to a profound internal transformation, and then we start taking responsibility for ourselves. We start to examine our goals. What is actually my goal or my priority in my day-to-day life? Am I just drifting from one day to the other, and then sleeping, and then starting the next day new, and just letting one day slip by day by day? Or am I actually planning for a future that will come, which is my death? Are we aware of our potential, as how the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas see our potential? You know, do we know who we can be? We know who we are roughly, but do we know who we can be? For example, like all of us can actually be first stage arhats, but how many of us actually spend any time thinking about that and seeing if that's something that we should explore, how to achieve? Because with the Dharma, like I said, we are not helpless. With the Dharma, and I think many of you or all of you have realized that once we start acknowledging our divine messengers, we realize that life becomes smoother over time. The more we invest in our practice, and the more our understanding of the Dharma grows, our afflictions lessen, our stress lessens, our body becomes a bit more comfortable, our confidence grows, and our happiness grows. And that in itself is enough to spur us on more into our practice. Okay, so the point of all this is not to make people feel helpless, because helplessness is not a good thing to have, but rather to show us that, hey, you know, there's a way out. There are things that you can do, so that, you know, the Buddha doesn't have to talk about the Devadatta Sutta and you feel like you're part of that sutta. Okay. Okay. Now we don't have much time left. Let's look at some of the questions. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so Saha has a question. It says, in our present life, we take the 5 precepts, we chant mantras and read the sutras, lead a decent life. Do you still go beyond King Yama for judgment? It's very hard to say. For example, in this Deva Tuta Sutta, it talks about someone who's about to fall into the hells. And King Yama is, and his conversation with King Yama. I believe that if we say for the, like, most of us, if we take the advice of the Buddha and Shufu and we practice the Pure Land practice, and if we do it well, meaning we develop right view, right intention behind our chanting of the mantras and the 5 precepts, and like you say, you lead a decent life, then the, how you say, based on cause and effect, then how would I say? I don't think anyone can give you a okay, let me say, I can't give you a definitive answer to your question, but I would say that you're on the right track. Yeah, because we have what you just mentioned, Saha, in your question is that you are practicing according to the Buddha's guidelines. So yes, you're on the right track. And let me see. So Ruchan says, how do we make sure we have right view? That's what we're doing right now. And that's why we don't rely on people when they tell us the Dharma. We go back to the Dharma itself, because that's the Buddha's instructions to us. Shufu also wants us to do that. Shufu, he says the commentaries are useful, but don't rely on the commentaries. Go back to the sutras itself and let it uncover your original wisdom. Because if not, you have no idea of what I'm saying, is it right or not? You know, I can tell you all kinds of things. I can give you all kinds of stories without telling you where I know the stories from, and you have no idea on and that's not good. That's not how the Dharma should spread. Okay, let me look at other questions. Let me see. Medicine. Okay, there's a question here that says the Pure Land of Medicine Master Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha's Pure Land are very hard to get into, unlike Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. I don't know about that. In our sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha, in the sutra that we're investigating right now, the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha basically says that the Vaidurya Pure Land, Medicine Master Buddha's Pure Land, is identical to Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. It doesn't say anything about the practice. I think it just depends on your level of practice and where you end up to. I've never seen any sutra that confirms that point, but at the same time, my knowledge about the sutras is very shallow as well. Someone mentioned that when Master Sanhua spoke the Shurangama Sutra, Master Hua said that eating meat is considered killing karma and violating. Yes, for Mahayana Buddhists, we do not, we see consuming meat as a violation of the precept against harming or killing. So in Mahayana Buddhism, if you have taken the 5 precepts, you're highly encouraged to become a vegetarian as well. Okay. So Ron asks, is there only 2 paths, one leading to ending birth and death, the other is blindly performing 10 good deeds? Kind of wrong. In last week or the week before, one of the suttas that we shared was the Buddha. There was a question asked by the Buddha, and this question was asked by someone who was a bit confused with all the teachings that existed. And this person who asked the question was actually the last monk to be ordained by the Buddha. So he asked the question, he said, he asked a question about all the other teachers, but then the Buddha did not answer his question directly. The Buddha actually said, enough with your question. Let me tell you, where can you find people who have ended birth and death? And the Buddha basically, any path or any teaching that contains the noble eightfold the noble eightfold path, you will find sages who have ended suffering. And the Buddha said the path that he teaches has sages because it contains the Noble Eightfold Path. So when you say two paths, I would say that the Buddha's teachings lead to ending of suffering, of affliction, and birth and death. And then all the other paths do not. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so Rujang asked, why do we need to get to first stage Arhat? You don't have to, but a first stage Arhat will never fall into the hells anymore. They once you are a first stage Arhat or the first level of a sage, what do you call? Not only will you get into the Pure Land if you want to, but your rebirth will be, you only have 7 rebirths or less before you become a full Arhat. And why only first stage Arhat but not higher? If you can go all the way, go all the way. I'm just okay. In the suttas, based on some research by other monks, apparently lay people can attain up to third stage Arhat. That's what's been recorded in the suttas. Is that like a rule or something? I don't think so. So in the suttas, as given by the Buddha, spoken by the Buddha, and in all the commentaries, all the recorded achievements, lay people up to third stage arhatship, and then monastics can get to fourth stage arhat if they're really good. Yeah. So why first stage? Because first stage is a lot more easier. It's a lot easier to to attain. Yeah. But if you are not first stage Arhat, and if you don't get to the Pure Land, then you're still not in control of your birth and death. You're not 100% sure. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to combine right view, right intention, and find out how you say, how we're going to develop the right heart or the right mindset to for our daily practice. Because as you can see, the 5 precepts is not just the 5 precepts, but it's the whole understanding and perception around the 5 precepts that actually makes the difference. All right. Okay, it's time, and we will now dedicate merit. So let me end this slideshow. So Saha had another question. She's asking about Iran and why is there so much suffering in Iran, because Saha is from Iran. And it has been like this for the past 43 years, to the point that some parts don't even have any water to drink. Cause and when it comes to cause and effect, I think there has Shufu mentioned that cause effect is actually really, really complicated. You can't really draw like a direct line and say because of this, therefore people are having to face this right now. It's not really that straightforward. But what we can do is to recognize that there are places in this world where the Dharma does not exist, where people's affinity, where the Dharma does not exist, or even beyond that, that there's a lot of suffering in this world. And why does that matter? Because the people that we care for are subject to all this suffering. So what we can do, and what being a Mahayana Buddhist means, is that we take that that understanding of the world, and we turn the compassion. Compassion means recognizing suffering in others. We turn that compassion into great compassion. So all this that we are learning right now is to help us move from compassion, which is the wish that people are free from suffering, or the people that we care for are free from suffering, to move from compassion, which is karuna in Sanskrit, to maha karuna, or great compassion, like Guanyin. All the bodhisattvas, all the Buddhas, they have great compassion. What's great compassion? Great compassion is that you, it's not just people who are close to you, but people anywhere, all living beings, not just humans, but all living beings suffering affect you in the same way. Okay, so every elder person that you meet is like your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, your own father, your sister, your brother, your children. There's no boundaries between your actual family and other people. That's number one. And then number two, what makes great compassion so great is that you see yourself as being responsible to help them reduce their suffering, which is why Guanyin Bodhisattva is famous for helping people, because with great compassion, she sees it is her responsibility that you suffer less. But so she can do all kinds of things to help us. But ultimately, whether we want to practice or not, to really end our suffering, we have to do it. Okay, so it's kind of like cooking. She can cook all kinds of delicious food to try to help us, to induce us, to make us, healthy and not fall sick. But at the end of the day, whether you want to eat the food or not is up to you. All right, so that's great, great compassion. So all of us who recognize the suffering in the world, not just ourselves, but in the world, and like the Buddha before he became the Buddha, the prince, when he saw the divine messages, actually what hit him most was that everyone he cared for was going to die, and he couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. So Lucy has reminded me to do 3 vows. Yes, thank you very much, Lucy. I'm holding the bell in my hand so I won't forget. Let's do dedication of merit, and then we'll do the 3 vows. All right. Okay, everyone ready? May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of your endless night. Because our hearts are one, This world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows. 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Amito for everyone. Thank you for all the questions. I really like the questions. Hopefully when we come back next week, we'll have more questions as well. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, 法师。